For the past 15 years, he's practiced as independent chaplaincy, has been privileged to officiate 2,000 services here throughout the province of British Columbia. He works a lot now with the downtown east side and care homes and hospices, and has been a wonderful speaker at many Unity centers here in the Lower Mainland. He's never felt far away from this place, and so he is here today again, with love expressed within the walls of this center, with his topic and message today, how Paige found spirituality and wove a quilt of family. Ken Wood.
Well, good morning, everyone. And welcome, may I give you another welcome to this beautiful Unity Church on this beautiful Sunday morning. As mentioned, my name is Ken Wood, and together with my co-author, Francesca Rosario, we're delighted to be here in our church and sharing with you this morning. And our topic, as mentioned by Janet, and I want to thank Janet and the musicians and everyone who's done all the organizing. Behind the scenes, it's amazing what happens here. I want to thank them all. And our topic this morning, as mentioned, is how Paige found spirituality and wove a quilt of family. And I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say. But first, a little reminiscing seems appropriate. I remember, as mentioned, so well walking into this sanctuary and looking around and letting these golden rays just light my soul. I've never forgot that sort of first moment of this feeling that exists here in this church. A few years have passed, and I do have a confession to make. I began attending this church as a naive young man who had questions and was searching for answers. And today, I stand before you as a naive old man with even more questions. So this morning, we're going to take a look in a couple of directions at ourselves as family. But I'd like to start things off this morning by introducing you to someone you may not realize that you're related to. I'd like to introduce a lady called Paige. Paige was born in the 40s in central Midwest of the United States. Her beginnings were humble. She was born poor. She was the seventh child in a family of 9, and her parents were quite religious, and that gets quotation marks, traditional and strictly old-fashioned. They leaned heavily on the Bible, and hers was a strict upbringing. This, of course, was before the internet, limited TV, limited phones, certainly no cell phones, and no Netflix. But she survived. She had suffered from long-time physical ailments, which she constantly tried to heal with conventional medicines. However, her ailments persisted and increased to the point where she would develop tuberculosis, and a pretty serious case of it. So she began searching for a more natural kind of healing solution to this. After marrying, she and her husband would become parents to 3 active boys. But to compound the family's health challenges, her husband had injured his leg in a hockey game, and he was also seeking to become whole again and pure. And this ailment bothered him right through his adult years. So both were dealing with what we might call enduring physical ailments. Seeking some new answers, they began to investigate this thing called New Thought, New Age thought. And they opened themselves up to some of the principles of some excellent teachers of the day. One evening, Paige and her husband tried something brand new and attended a lecture by a popular metaphysician, and Paige came away with a startling new idea: the power of positive thinking. So Paige began practicing affirming or just repeating positive things to herself as she went about her daily life, daily chores. And one of the favorite affirmations that she used to use is this: I am a child of God, and therefore cannot inherit sickness. After some couple of years of prayer and meditation, Paige managed to heal herself of the tuberculosis, and she said this about her self-healing. At first, the healing taking place was apparent to my senses. However, as I began to realize and believe I was a child of God, those around me began to see that there was something new in my attitude and my health. This encouraged some of Paige's friends to also try positive thinking. She continued, my husband began to heal himself too, even while he continued with his business life. And at first didn't take much interest in what I was doing, but soon he began to absorb things as well, and things began to get better for us all. Although they lived on a farm, they were anxious to kind of share this sort of new spiritual teaching, which they had been learning, so they began to publish a magazine. It was what we might call New Age fancy. But sales were poor, but they persisted in its publishing. Paige once wrote in the magazine, you do not have a problem except the one that is in your own mind, and you put it there. So this experience for Paige was a wonderful example of our own church's third principle, that we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. And she lived that. The couple's small farm led them to develop an organic vegetarian restaurant, using their own organically grown produce and vegetables, of course. And Paige and her husband continued to dive more deeply into growing their spiritual thinking, and their small farm would also grow and spread to a massive 1,200 acres. So thank you, Paige. Or perhaps we should call you by your first name, Myrtle. Mary Carolyn Myrtle Paige Fillmore. The co-founder of this church was born in the 40s, the 1840s, and their starter farm is now called Unity Village in Kansas City, of course, Missouri. And classes taught by the Fillmores expanded and grew into a seminary, Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute, and there are now approximately 600 churches like this one that are a part of our family. So that brings us now to the second part of my talk, now that you know who Paige is. Because Paige and this Unity Church have really helped define for me the meaning of that word family, which we use very consistently, but I wonder sometimes when we look underneath that veil and think about it, what is family? So Paige helped to create a new generation of family which followed her. And to her, family was the dust that falls from our dreams. George Bernard Shaw said, a happy family is but an earlier heaven. And he was right. And we have all had family. And family should be one of nature's masterpieces. A lifelong, loving support system. However, while many here, I know, have been blessed with loving parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, some have not. So let's keep them in mind as we share here today. From birth, this beautiful blue dot we call the earth extends arms of harmony toward us. And if only we could have lingered longer in that stardust of our youth, I think our lives would have been fuller. So as adults, we go back, and we relive and re-experience things, not only in our own minds and hearts, but through the blessing of children and young people near us. So perhaps there's a small wisp of childhood still lingering in us. A fragrance from those early years when we looked at our world with those wondering eyes. And of course, the world looked back and sighed, because in its wisdom, it knew from the moment of our innocent birth, we were sidling into what we might call an entangled world. While life might be seen as a crooked road, we have each other, and we have family, which is the connecting rod to that sacred chamber inside our heart. Who can forget those early embraces from our parents, our grandparents, who carried the sun in their hands for us, and still do? It's a rush of warmth that is forever etched in our minds. We are not, however, family simply by the blood coursing through our veins. We are family by the embrace, the respect, and the joy that we share with each other. Our human interaction brings us into the type of contact wherein everyone sees and everyone knows a lot about each other. And blood may spell out that first experience of family. However, in our heart, when our heart opens, when we allow it to open, when we surrender to it opening, we experience the delight and the surprise of a new, ever-expanding family. Everywhere we look with an open heart, we can find family. Just look around this space. I watched you all a few moments ago greeting each other. It always brings a rush of warmth to me when I see that. People who may sit next to each other on a Sunday, but for that moment they're saying hello, shaking hands, hugging each other, and speaking warmth. Everyone here is family. But when we come to this church together, besides sharing words and music, as we do so welcomingly every Sunday, we also sit together. We hug, we share food, and we silently speak to each other's soul. Many years ago, I had the privilege of meeting an Irish mystic, some of you may know, John O'Donoghue, wonderful ex-Jesuit and wonderful writer, poet. And I had the privilege of meeting him and speaking with him after his address. He was doing a North American tour. And this was just prior to his sudden death in France, I think a few years later. Unpredictably, during our conversation, we talked about death and dying. And he left me with two distinct concepts I'd like to share with you. The first concept, and this one took a while to sink in for me. He said this, he said, the finest privilege we have as human beings is to help someone we love die. And my mind kind of put up a little wall against that. I thought, no. The finest privilege we have is having children, is hugging our grandparents. I was trying to make, and then it sunk in. I started to think about it. And of course, in the work that I've been privileged to do since then, I've sat bedside many times, with families and with people that are breathing themselves into the next world. And I'll tell you, he was right. The finest privilege we have as human beings is to help someone we love die. So do this with me right now. Everyone, please. Just close your eyes for a moment. and cast your mind backwards and bring forth the memory of one of your lost loved ones. Bring it forward to this moment. Can you see their face? Can you feel their love, their energy? Now hold their image in your mind silently and whisper their name to yourself. Now, the second concept that O'Donoghue shared with me was that of having an anamkara, or anamkaras, plural, in our life. An anamkara is a soul friend, someone who helps you regain or maintain or grow your sense of soul. And we're all blessed with such friends who glide into our lives to be teachers, companions, or silent spiritual guides. And these people come disguised. They call themselves friends. They call themselves neighbors. But some of them can become an anamkara. And anamkaras have the ability to share your inner self, to share your mind, and to reach into your soul with you. They say that in your life you're meant to have maybe 5 or 6 anamkaras. These are people who touch you at that deepest level. And they inspire our sense of belonging and our sacred identity. Remember, your soul needs to be heard, because it is the divine light that flows through you and comes into the others in your life. Below the surface of your mind, a part of you lives in this inner presence. And the secret embrace of an anamkara will shelter and mind you for the rest of your life. These people that you may call anamkaras now will be with you forever. So let me define family just a little bit from a personal perspective. My early years were difficult. My father died of lingering World War II wounds, and he passed away when I was 9 months old. So I didn't know him other than by conversation and talk. But I visit his grave in the military section in Vancouver Cemetery, and I have really good conversations with him. My mother spiraled into a depression. And along with my sister, 5 years my senior, we were reduced to living in a furnace called welfare, which in the late 1950s was a definition of struggle. This upbringing made me competitive in everything I took on. And I forged what I felt was a good life out of that competitiveness. My motto was, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And today my current family is abundant with loved ones. A wild, scattered, and suitably weird group of people. The ones who just laughed are here today. They know. So we all know anamkaras who have graced our lives. So perhaps we need to work more diligently in not losing touch with them. Because you can be apart from an anamkara for many, many years and reignite that connection with one phone call and maybe one sentence. That's an anamkara. And I started to do this with myself a few weeks ago. I was feeling anxious, a little depressed, and a bit overwhelmed. The chaplaincy work that I do, particularly on the blue streets of the downtown east side, can be both a blessing to me and a curse. And death seems to be knocking on way more doors lately than it used to. So to steer myself away from this fear-created ego, the influence of the ego, I called on 2 things. One was my connection with A Course in Miracles, which I studied here in this church under the name of a gentleman named Harry Dives. And then after thumbing through my well-thumbed manual, I picked up the phone and began calling a few of my anamkaras. And several of you are here today. And for me, this was transforming. The contact enabled me to sort of resurrect my grounded spirit, and I straightened my shoulders. So we have slowly woven this quilt of family, which hovers over us. And the purpose of the quilt of family is not to carry rain or usher storm, but to add color to our gypsy ribbon of hope and life. So family quilts are there to connect us to that superb setting that is waiting inside our soul. And it has its own, the quilt has its own beauty, and it varies in thickness and color and compass of color. Color allows freshness to pour into our lives when we get into a more diverse life. And it'll cool the edges of our day, like that before rain fragrance of stirred up dust. So life beckons us like bees to a family hive, a safe haven where we can connect willingly. So what happens to one happens to all. So family is a feeling. Family is a sea without a shore. And of course, reincarnation teaches us that we have been here before, and to grow spiritually, we must repeat unlearned life lessons. And personally, I believe we have walked carefully over an ancient path to get where we are. And we have seen each other over and over again through many lifetimes. In fact, I believe that before birth, we choose our parents. We choose our birth family. And then we bind together over and over again throughout the years, in many lifetimes, until we become each other's knowledge keepers. So today's family is yesterday's family, and will be tomorrow's family as well. And reunion with family means we get to sing our life songs, not for ourselves alone, but in this wonderful musical harmony that we have inside us. And this mystic music has the ability to return us to being like children, where our life poems are known by heart. Did you hear the strike up with In My Life? I saw the faces starting to go up and down, and I'll bet feet were tapping. It's music that is this beautiful binder to us all. And the notes we sing are provided by the strings of our soul, which invite us to return to each other and our true nature. So family has a power to gently allow us to fold love up into neat little tied up packages of warmth and pleasure. Family love is like none other. It offers the eternal feeling of a circle which connects without endings. And grasping this idea will bring us into a lovely reunion with ourselves and a recognition of our shared destiny. Destiny creates the outer frame of our life, while freedom allows for the opening and the construction of the inner frame. Family is our first physical experience, our first emotional experience. The first sound you heard was the drumbeat of your mother's heart, and you've never forgotten it. And that's why so many of us resonate with the sound of the drum, as we've had two versions of it here today. But in our final days, the final days of our human journey, as a chaplain, I've seen many connecting moments. And death is always, always a lonely visitor. And dealing with death is a little like staring at the sun. It's better trying not to stare it down, but to look at it indirectly. Because your stare can lead to a healing form of grief. And that's the price we pay. Grief is the price we pay for having loved someone. So when a family member passes or a loved one passes, it's an austere moment. A time when the stark realization that someone we have loved is gone. And everything feels impermanent. Well, I have news for you. Everything is impermanent. there is only one thing that we can call permanent in our lives, and that is the human love we have for each other. When you've lost a loved one, the love you have given and that they have known about has gone with them to their next destination, however you define that place. And most importantly, their human love has stayed with you and is still here. So that's the thing that is permanent. And no finer chapter could be written than a final embrace from people we call family. Loved ones who will turn the last beats of our heart into music. And when we are feeling reborn into family, our hearts open to remember that faint whisper of an ancient song, not long forgotten. Beyond the veils of language and the noise of the outside world, there is real safety in this thing called family. Family relationships, however, can feel like a curious mixture of entwined passion, of hope and pain. It can feel a little like licking honey off a thorn. But family supports the wonderful journey of our lives. So go home today and tell your family that you love them. By all means, do it in person, telephone, Facebook, card, any method. So what we've shared here today is a little like a picture frame. But your remembrance of it can turn it into a portrait. A portrait with many hues and threads woven together with affection and memory to create your own quilt of family. So leave here today feeling vigilant about using our spirit to confront ourselves at soul level. It takes courage, but you all have it. So open your hearts and minds to the people that you've chosen to sit in the front row of your lives. Then together on common ground, we can help each other unwind into the light, find footing, take root, grow, and deepen our lives. And now I'd like to close with a blessing, something for you all today. Somewhere out at the edges of this day, there are waves of darkness, which are brightening as they reach our shore. A freed air goes wild with light, filling us with a fresh, bright breath. A breath which stirs the color of life within us. So arise tomorrow, in the name of your soul, blessed by all things, the wonders of whisper, the eternity of the soul, and the embrace of friends and family. Friends and family who touch your heart. May you, in the days ahead, be gentle in word, courageous in self-belief, courteous in thought, and generous in love. And thank you, gentle people, and go in peace.